They say the night shift in a hospital can be quiet, but at St. Jude's, especially in the old West Wing, the silence often screamed louder than any alarm. This is the story of a nurse named Sarah. Sarah was a pragmatic woman, grounded in science and logic. She'd seen her fair share of strange things in her 10 years working the night shift, but nothing could have prepared her for what she encountered during a particularly understaffed and eerie stretch in the forgotten West Wing of St. Jude's Hospital. Sarah adjusted her mask, the fluorescent lights of the West Wing casting long, skeletal shadows down the empty corridors. Due to budget cuts, this older section of St. Jude's was rarely used, mostly housing overflow patients or those awaiting long-term care placement. Tonight, only a handful of rooms were occupied, making the silence almost suffocating. Her footsteps echoed unnervingly as she made her rounds, the only other sound the rhythmic beeping of life support machines in the distance. Room 217 was her first check. Mrs. Gable, a sweet elderly woman with advanced Alzheimer's, was sleeping peacefully. Sarah adjusted her blanket and moved on. As she walked past room 219, a room marked vacant, she heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper from inside. As Sarah froze, her heart skipping a beat. She knew for a fact that room was empty. She checked the chart, then cautiously approached the door. It wasn't fully latched. Hesitantly, she pushed it open. The room was dark and cold, a stale, musty odor hanging in the air. Moonlight filtered through the dusty window, illuminating nothing but an empty bed, a vacant bedside table, and a rocking chair in the corner. But she could still hear the whispers, faint and sibilant, like dry leaves rustling across the floor. They seemed to be saying something, a repeated phrase just below the threshold of understanding. Sarah backed out of the room, a prickle of unease crawling up her spine. She told herself it was the old building, the wind, her tired imagination. But the feeling persisted. As she continued her rounds, she heard the whispers again, this time seemingly coming from different rooms, always vacant. They seemed to follow her, a chorus of hushed voices in the dead of night. Later, while administering medication in room 223, Mr. Henderson, a recovering heart patient, suddenly grabbed her arm, his eyes wide with terror. "Did you hear that, nurse? The whispering, it's getting louder." Sarah tried to calm him, attributing it to medication side effects, but she herself had heard it. And now that he mentioned it, the whispers did seem more insistent, closer. The climax came during her final rounds. As she approached the nurses' station in the West Wing, the lights flickered violently and died, plunging the corridor into near darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of emergency exit signs. A wave of icy cold washed over her, and the whispering intensified, swirling around her, no longer indistinct murmurs, but clear, chilling words. Where is our nurse? Terror seized Sarah. She fumbled for her flashlight, her hand shaking. As the beam cut through the darkness, she saw it. Faint, translucent figures flickering at the edges of her vision. Fleeting glimpses of patients in old-fashioned hospital gowns, their faces gaunt and sorrowful, their eyes fixed on her. They seemed to drift through the walls, their whispers filling the air. Sarah didn't wait. She ran blindly out of the West Wing, not stopping until she reached the brightly lit, bustling emergency room on the other side of the hospital. She recounted her experience to the head nurse, who listened with a skeptical but concerned expression. The West Wing was quietly shut down the next day for electrical issues. Sarah never worked another night shift in St. Jude's. She transferred to a day clinic, the sunlight a constant comfort. But sometimes, in the quiet of the afternoon, she still hears a faint whispering, and she wonders about the forgotten patients of the West Wing, forever searching for their nurse in the silent corridors of the night. They say home is where the heart is, but for some, it becomes a place where the shadows hold secrets. And the most vulnerable patients aren't always the ones you can see. Asterisk. This is the story of a nurse named Emily. Emily was a dedicated home health nurse, accustomed to visiting patients in their own residences. She prided herself on providing compassionate care. But one particular case, a new client referred with vague, debilitating weakness, would lead her to confront a terror that medicine couldn't explain. Emily drove down the long, secluded driveway. The Victorian house at the end looking imposing and isolated under the overcast sky. Her new patient was Mrs. Ainsworth, a woman in her late 70s who, according to the referral, was experiencing a sudden and unexplained decline in health. Asterisk. The house felt cold and still as Emily entered, the air thick with the scent of dust and old wood. Mrs. Ainsworth, a frail woman with wide, frightened eyes, greeted her with a trembling hand. She complained of a constant feeling of being watched, of cold spots in the house, and of a persistent, oppressive sadness. Medically, Emily's assessment found nothing concrete to explain her rapid deterioration. During her visits, Emily started noticing unsettling things herself. Doors would creak open on their own. The temperature would fluctuate wildly in different rooms, and she would often catch fleeting glimpses of movement in the periphery, only to find nothing there. Mrs. Ainsworth would often whisper about the presence. A cold, unseen entity she claimed was always near. One afternoon, while taking Mrs. Ainsworth's vitals, Emily heard a distinct child's giggle coming from the empty hallway outside the bedroom. Mrs. Ainsworth froze, her face pale with fear. "Did you hear that, dear? It's been happening more and more." Emily checked the hallway. It was empty. Mrs. Ainsworth had no living relatives who visited. Emily tried to rationalize it, the wind, old house sounds, but the giggle had sounded so clear, so close. Situation escalated over the next few days. Emily would find objects moved in the house when she returned for her visits. A book placed on the bedside table would be on the floor. A porcelain doll would be inexplicably moved from a shelf to a chair. Mrs. Ainsworth grew increasingly agitated, her health declining rapidly. She would often stare into empty corners, whispering to someone Emily couldn't see. The climax occurred during a late afternoon visit. Emily was helping Mrs. Ainsworth to the bathroom when the bedroom door slammed shut with a loud bang, trapping them inside. A wave of icy cold engulfed the room. Mrs. Ainsworth screamed, pointing towards the corner. "It's there! I see it!" Emily followed her gaze. In the dim light, she saw a faint shimmering outline forming in the corner, a vague, childlike shape. A soft, childlike humming filled the air, growing in intensity. Emily felt a crushing pressure on her chest, making it hard to breathe. She tried the door, but it was jammed shut. Panic surged through her. She grabbed Mrs. Ainsworth's hand, pulling her towards the window. Suddenly, a small cold hand brushed against Emily's cheek. She recoiled, a gasp escaping her lips. The surge of adrenaline, Emily managed to force the window open. She helped Mrs. Ainsworth climb out onto the porch roof, then followed. They waited there in the cold, the humming fading from inside the house until a neighbor, alerted by Mrs. Ainsworth's frantic calls, came to their rescue. Mrs. Ainsworth was moved to an assisted living facility, her health mysteriously improving once she left the house. Emily never took another home health case in that neighborhood. She sometimes wonders about the unseen patient in that old Victorian house, the childlike presence that seemed to feed on loneliness and fear. And she shudders at the memory of that cold touch, a chilling reminder that some illnesses aren't found in any medical textbook. The emergency room is a place of chaos and life or death situations. But sometimes, amidst the trauma, a different kind of presence makes itself known, one that offers no comfort and brings only deeper dread. Asterisk, this is the story of a nurse named Maria. Maria was a seasoned nurse, unflappable in the face of medical emergencies. She'd seen it all: car accidents, gunshot wounds, cardiac arrests. But one particularly brutal night, a series of critical cases brought an unsettling darkness into the trauma bay. A darkness that seemed to linger long after the last patient was stabilized. The night started chaotic and only escalated. A multi-car pileup on the interstate brought a flood of critical patients into the A. Maria and her team worked tirelessly, a whirlwind of controlled urgency, administering care, shouting orders, fighting to save lives. It was during a lull, a brief moment of exhausted calm after the storm, that Maria first noticed it. A flicker of movement in the periphery of her vision. A dark shape in the corner of Trauma Bay 3, a bay that had just been cleared. When she turned her head to look directly, it was gone. She attributed it to stress, fatigue playing tricks on her eyes. Asterisk, but then it happened again. A shadow, tall and indistinct, seemed to momentarily coalesce in the corner, just at the edge of her sight. Other nurses started noticing it too. Whispers circulated among the staff about a dark presence in the EA tonight. A feeling of unease that settled over the usually bustling department of the paramedics. A burly man who'd seen his share of grim scenes swore he saw the shadow move, elongating and then shrinking back into the corner. He looked visibly shaken. The atmosphere grew heavy, charged with an unspoken anxiety. Equipment would malfunction inexplicably. Monitors would flicker. A sudden drop in temperature would sweep through a particular area of the area. The climax came when a young boy, a victim of the car accident, went into cardiac arrest. Maria and the team worked frantically, performing CPR, administering medication, fighting with every ounce of their skill to bring him back. As they worked, the shadow in the corner of the bay seemed to intensify, growing darker, more defined. Some of the nurses swore they could feel a cold draft emanating from it, a palpable sense of despair. Suddenly, the lights in Trauma Bay 3 flickered and went out, plunging the area into darkness. The backup generator kicked in quickly, but in that brief moment of blackness, a collective gasp filled the room. Several staff members claimed they saw the shadow move closer to the boy on the table. A long skeletal hand seemed to reach out. The boy couldn't be revived. The attending physician called the time of death, a heavy silence falling over the exhausted team. As the sheet was pulled over the young patient's face, Maria glanced at the corner of the bay. The shadow was gone. The oppressive cold had lifted. The feeling of dread had dissipated slightly, replaced by a profound sense of loss. The rest of the night passed without further incident, but the unease lingered. The next day, the corner of Trauma Bay 3 felt different, colder. Some nurses refused to work in that bay after dark. Maria never forgot that night. She couldn't explain the shadow, the cold, the feeling of overwhelming despair. She'd always been a woman of science, but that night in the A, she felt like she had glimpsed something beyond the realm of medicine, a darkness that preys on suffering. She continued her work, her dedication unwavering. But now, whenever she worked a busy night in the A, she couldn't help but glance at the corners of the room, a silent question in her eyes. And sometimes, just at the edge of her vision, she would think she saw a fleeting flicker of darkness, a silent reminder that even in the brightest of places, shadows can still gather.